Good afternoon and welcome to Webinar Wednesday in this our 9th year of offering up-to-date and informative webinars to the HTM industry. Today we are joined by Bill Horton, VP of Healthcare Sales at Cognosos. Webinar Wednesday would like to thank our sponsor Cognosos. Cognosos delivers real-time location services to healthcare facilities, enabling them to rapidly deploy room-level accurate location services with proven ROI. Cognosos leverages artificial intelligence and long-range networking technology to eliminate complex, costly and hardware-heavy RTLS installations, instead providing an ultra-lightweight, highly accurate solution that delivers value on day one. For more information, please visit cognosos.com. Just a quick reminder that TechNation is headed to our Spring MD Expo at the Woodlands Waterway Marriott Hotel and Convention Center in Houston, Texas, from April the 11th to the 13th. Please join us for 3 days of education, networking, and the latest advances in medical technology products and services. Registration is open, so for more details, please visit mdexposhow.com. Also, I'd like you to mark your calendars for our HTM Mixer, which is being held at the Turf Valley Resort in Baltimore, Maryland, May 11th to the 12th. Now, our mixers are a slightly modified, smaller, shorter duration and less crowded event that still provides valuable continuing education, networking and vendor engagement opportunities. For more information and registration details, please visit htmmixer.com. Today's webinar is eligible for 1 CE credit from the ACI, and you can obtain your CE certificate by completing the post-webinar survey, which will be emailed 1 hour after the completion of today's webinar. You must complete the survey to receive your 1 CE credit, and you'll be able to download the certificate directly from your computer once the survey is submitted. If you have any questions, you can reach us at webinar@mdpublishing.com. Let's kick off today's webinar by giving away one of our Webinar Wednesday t-shirts to the attendee that can tell me the answer to the following trivia question. Cognosos, our sponsor today, is headquartered in Atlanta. What is the Atlanta NBA team called? Answer now using the questions feature on our dashboard, and I'll reveal the answer at the end of the webinar. We'll wrap up today's presentation with a live Q&A, so please submit your questions anytime using the questions feature on the webinar dashboard. As I mentioned earlier, our presenter today is Bill Horton, and he will be discussing, so your RTLS is nearing end of life. What now? Bill, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Thank you for the introduction. Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me for a quick chat on aging and end of life RTLS systems. Maybe you've got a system in place, it's been there for a while, and is it time to have a look? Is it time to evaluate what your current system is doing? What are the new offerings? What are the outcomes you should be looking for? So kicking straight into it, here's my agenda. The agenda for today, it's broken into 3 basic parts. What have you got today, and how does that line up against what's out there for the newer solutions, and then how do you look at and evaluate a potential new partner? So when is the time to have a look for new technology? Now, every few years you should be looking at newer technology, newer solutions, better outcomes. You do this today. I would suggest that there's nobody on the call today that's holding a BlackBerry in their hand and communicating with it anymore. The BlackBerry in its time was the best thing available. Then iPhone came out with their early generation iPhones, and it's a really good chance nobody here has a early generation iPhone in use either. Asset tracking, like all IT, is very similar. There are advances in technology that drive better outcomes, that give you better solutions all the time. And we have definitely seen that BlackBerry to iPhone transition in the RTLS space over the last couple of years as we work into leveraging AI and Bluetooth and simplifying deployment, driving better outcomes. So if you've got a system that's 3 years old or more, it's absolutely time to be having a look at what we're getting out of the current system we have today, and in comparison to what is available in the newer technologies. The other factor to think about too is there's been a lot of mergers and acquisitions in this space over the last few years, and if you're have a product in the left-hand column here, that's gone through one or several changes of ownership and structure. So focus on the technology that you have, bringing it up to speed to be competitive with the current mix or the current available solutions. Priorities change, and that's a really good question to be asking, is if you've got a technology in the left-hand column here, what is the commitment to bring that up to speed with and to deliver the outcomes that the newer solutions are producing? So the first place to start is understanding what you have now. How does what you have now compare to what's new out there in the market? So very simply, what you have now, is your solution still working? That's a really simple question to ask. Are you struggling with tags failing while they're out on the floor, or with or without it being a battery that fails in between preventative maintenance cycles? The very bare minimum should be that a tag survives between PMs so that you're only addressing battery concerns when you're already handling the equipment. Anything that fails in between those two 12-month checkpoints just is a huge burden on trying to keep up to date out on the floor. So very simply, is it in working order? And if you've got a number of assets out there that don't have active tags on them, then RTLS is failing in its most basic function. If you have 100 syringe pumps, you should be able to see all 100 on your dashboard. As soon as you don't see all 100, if you only have 50 working tags on syringe pumps, it fails in being able to even at least identify how many you have to capture to finish a PM, so not doing its job. Location accuracy. There was a time where floor level with the occasional floor hopping was the best thing available. We are well beyond that now. So if you're struggling with accuracy, if you're finding that you've got assets that are floor hopping, you are just not getting the value out of the system you should be getting. Have you seen accuracy decrease over time? And that could be through changes in your environment. That sort of points to being your maps out of date as well. Has the environment changed? Has the platform changed? Is the accuracy was anything near what it was originally when it was put into place? Blind spots. Have you done construction? Was there areas that were not covered in the initial deployment? Back to my syringe pump example, you have 100 syringe pumps, and if 25 of them are in areas that are not covered, or in areas where the maps are out of date, you are back to struggling with trying to understand what's really on site. So anybody who's had an RTLS system in place for 5 years has had some fairly serious construction probably take place in the facility. Did your vendor keep your maps up to date? What about actionable data? So, in the end, this should be driven all about actionable data, all about driving value financially and clinically within your organization. So are you still getting actionable data out of your system? Are you still leveraging the data location histories to right size your inventory? Have you even had the opportunity over the last 3 to 5 years to right size your inventory, to reduce your inventory and cut out the excess equipment, the surplus equipment that you once held? If you haven't done that, that's one of the primary financial drivers behind asset tracking. Do you use current utilization metrics when to justify or deny purchase requests? You should not be purchasing equipment based on anecdotal stories of staff not buying out to find something. There is data there that will help support a purchase decision, or more often than not, help support denying that decision and eliminating this cycle of purchasing equipment we don't really need on site. Are you using it to reduce rentals? Are you using it to reduce equipment loss? Have you seen a reduction in either over the last few years? Are you capturing equipment before it leaves the building? Laundry and trash is a really good example of equipment that gets thrown away, leaves the building, you can't get it back. Your system should be helping you stop that happening. And then automation. So, you know, 10 years ago, tracking and finding things was sort of the target. Now we're talking about automation. We're adjusting workflows. We're using the systems to be able to help you and your staff better manage equipment throughout the building. So it's not really real-time location services anymore. It's real-time location management, right? You should be using and can be using these technologies to manage your fleet, not just as a way of finding something. So any of those questions, you go through that, you sort of think about what's the value of being driven today. If you're not driving value out, what should we be looking at? So the options today, I think, you know, the single question that I think you should be asking when you're talking to any vendor or considering RTLS for the first time or considering placing what you have is, what is acceptable accuracy? That simple question helps define all aspects of your solution and the deployment within your facility. The more accurate the system, the more it's going to cost traditionally. The more accurate the system, the better value you drive out of the system. The system delivers back to you. The more accurate the system traditionally has been more complicated to install. That's the combination. So it affects cost, it affects deployment, but it also drives financial and clinical outcomes. So that is the one question I would recommend you ask. What is acceptable accuracy? And understand internally what you think acceptable accuracy is. But I want to take that a step further because I want to define what accuracy is. Because you might ask the question, what is acceptable accuracy? But what is accuracy when it comes to asset tracking? Well, there's an error margin. And what you'll find is that this space, the RTLS space, the vendors and the partners in this space generally only talk about the bottom axis, the error margin. Oh, we're plus or minus 2 meters, or we're plus or minus 3 meters, or we're near room accurate, or we're plus or minus 5 feet. What nobody much talks about is the confidence of being accurate. How often are you plus or minus 5 feet? Because I can grab a dart and throw it at a dartboard and hit a bullseye occasionally. And most of the time, it's not really all that close to bullseye. Am I bullseye accurate? Sure, I'm a bullseye accurate with an error margin. The problem is I'm just not bullseye accurate very often. So let's call 5 feet. I'm plus or minus 5 feet accurate, all right, if that's what you're being told. But is plus or minus 5 feet 50% of the time? That's the error curve. So you've got an error curve and the confidence along that error line. That's the question to ask. What you're aiming for, of course, is high confidence accuracy with a small amount of error. In room accuracy, right? Because the higher the confidence, the more you're going to be able to automate and trust the system to deliver results. So don't just settle for the error margin, ask the question. The error margin, you're plus or minus 5 feet, okay, great. At what degree of confidence? So why is this important? This looks great. This is important. Let's put it into a real life situation. Here I am on the floor. I've got a few rooms. I've got a solid room and a clean room, some patient rooms, and I'm looking for a syringe pump. Well, if I'm plus or minus 5 feet 50% of the time, it could be anywhere in this area. And sure, something's better than nothing. I mean, that was the approach when floor hopping was still acceptable. It's better than nothing, right? But if you were looking for syringe pump serial number 010101, and this was the area of the error area, it could appear anywhere in one of these red dots. You might walk up thinking it's in the clean room only to find it being in the patient room. Or you might go up looking for a clean pump to deploy into a patient room and find out it's in the solid room. So it's really hard to do anything other than look for things when you have a deployment like this. You need to narrow that down. You want to narrow that down so that when it says it's in the solid room, it's really in the solid room. And so what's the challenge there? And I'm sort of going to talk a little bit about, maybe the systems you currently have into place. The problem with being accurate was it's expensive. The other option was, well, maybe I'll settle for a little bit of floor hopping because I don't have to spend as much money. The challenge is, again, accuracy drives value. So you lose value when you're not so accurate. So you might spend a little bit less, but you're going to be less accurate. So let's call that RTLS 1.0. It was accurate or affordable, but it was rarely both. And what we've got now with advances in AI and machine learning and BLE is the opportunity to use a system that is both accurate yet inexpensive. And this is that big shift we've seen very recently in this space of we're finally at the point where we can get really high confidence in room accuracy across the facility at a much less expensive price point than we've ever looked at before. Call that RTLS 2.0. It's accurate and it's affordable. And you end up with this capability. Is there a syringe pump available? Absolutely, because I know the exact location of that device. So that allows me to automate. That allows you to count how many pieces of equipment are sitting in the clean room. It allows you to automate the distribution of equipment into clean rooms in the building without having to round, or automate when you should pick up solid equipment. Another simple example is a trash room, a trash collection area. You can monitor that area. A piece of equipment gets detected in that trash room. You can confidently have somebody go and recover that. The one time you send somebody to find a piece of equipment in a number of red trash bags or in soiled linen, and they go through and search that whole room and can't find a piece of equipment, will be the last time that person goes there. So confidence is really key to driving outcomes. Knowing that you can confidently be 100% that something's in a trash area means you'll stop equipment leaving the building that way. So automation is driven by accuracy. And so let's just dig into that cost a little bit more. You know, I've mentioned cost a few times, and certainly there's a range of cost elements. And then, you know, you've got system value. And the system value, and I've mentioned this a few times already, aligns with confidence. In-room confidence, high confidence, in-room accuracy drives system value, right? So those two things are tied together, but then you've got a cost point down the bottom. And I've been referring to, you can go and do this relatively inexpensively, but unless it has the accuracy or the confidence, you're not going to drive the same amount of value out. Definitely the RTLS 1.0 sort of legacy approach of 5+ years ago can give you higher confidence in those areas, but at a penalty. It's expensive to put in to give you accurate coverage all over your facility and to drive and automate these outcomes that you're trying to automate. You can also, of course, go a little too far and spend a significant amount more money. You know, if knowing where the infusion pump, you know, which corner or quadrant of a room an infusion pump is in, there's definitely a way of doing that. The significant increase in cost does not come back with all that much additional value when it comes to mobile medical equipment. But this is where the new technology is putting us. It's putting us into this upper left-hand quadrant. It's less expensive to put in. It is simpler to put in. It is driving better accuracy and, you know, leveraging AI and leveraging Bluetooth, driving that confidence up, drives up the value both financially and clinically that the systems are delivering. This is the area that 2.0 is playing in now, and that's the offering available to you. So let's have a look at cost. You know, there are two elements to cost, and if you are looking at a vendor for at a system, at one of these new or any vendor, there are elements of that quote, the price that is really simple to understand. The vendor's going to give you a quote, and it'll have tags and software and infrastructure and services and maintenance and maybe some hardware maintenance, some software maintenance, but it'll all be in a single quote, be pretty easy to understand. But that's above the waterline. What we have to be careful of is all of the internal ancillary costs that you need to consider. Networking equipment is a fairly obvious one. Networking software is an important line item too. If your vendor wants to leverage your wireless access points, your Wi-Fi, to determine location or carry or backhaul, is there a cost to that? What is Cisco interested in if you're going to leverage Cisco APs and the Bluetooth capability? What is the Cisco cost, right? So you got equipment and software that you should be really aware of. Servers and storage, does your vendor, are they in the cloud, are they on-prem? Installation support, how much do your IT department is going to be engaged, to what degree? Are they pulling cable? Are they adding equipment? You know, how many days are they going to be involved? What's their engagement and cost line item for this to support the installation? And then lost revenue. Is there areas of the hospital? Are you pulling ceiling tiles? Are you concerned about dust abatement? Do you have to shut down areas of the hospital to get this installation done? In a lot of ways, that left-hand side, if you want to have a look at, you know, traditional deployment versus the modern equivalent, some of those things go away. Certainly, there is still your quote from the vendor. Networking equipment significantly reduced when you're using RTLS 2.0. Servers and storage, well, most of that's moving up to the cloud now, but you want to be aware of that. If that's the case, there'll always be some installation support, but that is reducing and should be significantly reducing if we're using Bluetooth. And you're looking for an unintrusive installation. BLE generally is a lot easier to install. It is a lot less time in a patient room if you need to be in a patient room at all. So there should be a fairly significant reduction in the risk of lost revenue or closing parts of the building down. But one thing just to point out is, hey, it sounds easy to plug some BLE anchors in, but it's not a self-install. The self-install cost, you know, you're all great at doing what you do. To take a BLE system out there and try to install it yourself, you should be asking the vendors to do that installation. They're the experts. It's going to be way more efficient, a whole lot more accurate, and time to value be significantly faster when your vendor is stepping in and taking responsibility for putting that installation into play. So, vendor selection. This isn't complicated. It really is not as complicated as it once was. When it comes to vendor selection for the new generation of RTLS vendors, there's one question to ask: do a pilot, right? The systems are all simpler to install, easier to install. There is no reason why your vendor of choice or your the vendor that you're speaking to, there's no reason they shouldn't do a pilot, right? If it's easy to install and has a limited IT engagement, it's non-intrusive on the floor, and it's accurate, then run a pilot. It should be easy to install in a matter of days in an area of your hospital to put that pilot into play. When the pilot's in place, and that's what you're looking at. You've got the opportunity to see just how simple the installation was, how much IT was involved, how much effort your staff had to add to the process. And of course, you've got the opportunity to check accuracy. Everybody talks about accuracy, and again, the first part of my presentation was the importance of high confidence in your accuracy. Here's your chance. So any vendor should be happy to say, absolutely, I can show you that. I can step on site and get this done really simply and really easily, and you can see this for yourself in your environment. And look for process improvement. Understand how that's going to take place. Again, the pilot should be able to demonstrate how it manages, automates, reports on a clean equipment room. It should be able to very simply show you how it will detect any piece of equipment at risk of leaving the facility via trash or soiled linen. Don't just run a pilot or see a demo of the software on site that shows you can search for things. This isn't a thing finding solution. It should be a equipment management platform. That's what you're looking for now. And then use the pilot to validate the ROI. It's not just about looking at technologies. It's about validating the ROI, the understanding the methodology behind that. When you're sitting with your financial leadership and explaining to them that, hey, we're going to spend this much money and we're going to get this much return, you can prove that methodology out in a pilot. Have your vendor go through that ROI methodology with you and then test for it in your pilot environment. Oh, one last thing. It doesn't have to be a pilot, it could be a bake-off. Have it, 2 or 3 vendors should be able to come in a really short period of time and show you what they have. Do the comparison. So wrapping up, try to put all of this into a single slide. What are the key things you're considering? One, room level accuracy, understanding that you've got location intelligence to manage your processes, to improve processes in the building. It's more than just trying to find something. So you're looking for high confidence room level accuracy, because that will drive the best possible financial outcome and the best possible clinical outcome. Minimize the cost, of course. Light infrastructure, cloud-based, a non-disruptive install. It's critical to be able to do a quick install that doesn't stop operations, that doesn't get in the way of the staff on the floor, and fast time to value. So the faster you can go in with it, the easier the installation in, the quicker you are generating value once the site gets installed. So minimize the infrastructure at the same time as maximizing accuracy, again, summarizing the point. The last thing is, and I really didn't talk about this a whole lot up until now, look for pay-as-you-go pricing. Don't pay everything up front. If you want the vendor to stay engaged, pay as you go. You have leverage if you pay as you go. You have way less leverage if you drop several $1 million up front and the vendor's collected 99% of their revenue on the first PO. Pay as you go. If you pay as you go, the vendor has to make sure that you're always happy and that you're a referenceable site. You've got more leverage when you're paying over time than just putting it all up front. A SaaS-based model, a vendor that provides that, is going to have every intention of making you one of their best sites. Finish up with, at the end of the webinar today, you'll be sent a link, an invite. A lot of what I spoke about today is available at this link. And so keep an eye open in your inbox over the next couple of days. It'll be specific for your attending the webinar. You'll be able to go in and download a lot of information that that I discussed relatively briefly today. And that was it, right on 30 minutes. That's a really long monologue.
Very informative, Bill, but we've got some questions for you that have come in now. The first one is, what is a realistic time frame to see ROI?
Yeah, look, that's a great question. And it's important that you get to generating value in the soonest possible way. If you're working with a SaaS-based vendor, that upfront initial startup cost should be pretty insignificant, be a small portion, and pay as you go. In that model, it shouldn't be more than a few months, 3 to 4 months, certainly less than 6 months, somewhere around that time frame. It's really hard depending on the size of the facility versus tags and all those sorts of things, you know, the count of assets, but it certainly should not be a year or more. So I'd say when you're sitting with your vendor, you should be targeting around that 6-month mark for the complete return on your initial outlay.
Okay, and another question here is, we have Aruba wireless access points that are enabled with BLE. Can those be used for RTLS?
Yeah, look, that's a fantastic question. Yes, absolutely. So Aruba, actually all the major Wi-Fi vendors now having BLE access points. or are BLE enabled. There are certainly vendors, we are one of them, who leverage the BLE availability for somebody like Aruba. And so that makes that initial lift, that initial install, even lighter if you can use those access points as part of your reference network internally. So the answer is generally yes. You'd need to have, communicate with Aruba or Cisco and understand if they have any pricing expectations on having their network used. But in general, the answer is yes.
Okay, so how can RTLS prevent over purchasing?
That's another great question, and this should be your first goal when it comes to a financial value driven by RTLS. It's well understood, and there are papers written on this, that your average hospital in the US has purchased too much equipment over time. Purchases in US healthcare are very anecdotally driven and not data driven. It's maybe one of the last industries where millions of dollars are spent without any data reference to show that that's really needed or not. So understanding what your equipment's doing in real time, knowing where it is, understanding bottlenecks, how long does it take to collect equipment out of a stored room, how long does it take to get through cleaning, how long does it take to get your PM done when you're doing that, how long does it take to get equipment back into a clean room where a care provider or a nurse can get access to that piece of equipment. These are all really important factors when it comes to understanding just how many syringe pumps you need or how many infusion pump controllers that you need. So sit down, make sure your vendor clearly explains how they and what their methodology is to help you understand, or you to identify what your surplus inventory is, because there's a very, very high probability you have more equipment than you need. And so understanding that and understanding where everything is in the building in real time and being able to dig into those analytics is what's going to stop your hospital spending money on equipment you don't need.
Okay, another question here is, you spoke about automation. Can you give an example, please?
Yeah. I covered that a little bit. I probably really rushed over that. My best, so one of the good examples, and I keep talking about clean room automation. So you should be, it is possible, if you're confident in that in-room accuracy, to count every piece of equipment in a particular room. And if it's a clean room, set a par level and a warning or a critical level, and send alerts out when you're about to run out of equipment in a particular area of the hospital. This should not be done via hoping nursing will call down when you're down to 2 syringe pumps or 2 infusion pumps, or people rounding up on the floor trying to count equipment in every room and documenting how many I need to get back up there. All these are terribly inefficient, and I'm pretty sure everybody on the phone will agree it's wildly unsuccessful. It ends up with a desperate nurse screaming down the phone for a piece of equipment that they just don't have access to, which of course leads to hoarding and all these other issues as well. You should be able to and can count, alert, and only go and visit that clean room when that room needs equipment, and not after it's too late, and certainly before you run out of equipment. The other example really quickly is soiled linen, and I mentioned this earlier before. If you've got an SCD rolled up in soiled linen and it's pushed into an area of the hospital where the soiled linen waits to be picked up, from your external partner to do laundry, you want to send an alert out as soon as you can. Somebody gets PPE up, they go out, they go through the laundry to find this SCD pump, and if they find one, fantastic. But when you send somebody in there to do that and it's not there, it's 3 rooms over or it's on the floor above, you'll never get anybody to go back there again to go searching through soiled linen trying to find an SCD. It's critically important that you get that right, and that should be just standard automated response. Send an alert out, somebody gets there and saves thousands of dollars worth of equipment from missing the building. Hope that answered the question.
Okay, that's great. We haven't got any more questions come in, so we will wrap up there, Bill. So thanks very much for your time and for a great and informative presentation. I'd like to encourage everyone to visit today's sponsor to learn more about the products they provide to our industry. So please visit cognosos.com. As promised, the answer to today's trivia question is the Atlanta Hawks. So congratulations to our winner, Joseph Bentley. Enjoy your t-shirt. A quick reminder, you can obtain your CE certificate by completing the post-webinar survey, which will be emailed 1 hour after the completion of today's webinar. You must complete the survey to receive your 1 CE credit from the ACI, and you'll be able to download the certificate directly from your computer once the survey is submitted. If you have any questions, you can reach us at webinar@mdpublishing.com. We'll be back next week with another webinar, so please visit webinarwednesday.live for more details and complimentary registration. Thank you again for your time and enjoy the rest of your day.